Welcome. This is a narrated experience report source from Aurora.org, generated using the Lysergic Dream Engine. This video is not an endorsement, not medical advice, and does not encourage illegal activity. Listener discretion is advised. 5 days awake with insane hallucinations. 3 MEO PCE trip report. This experience was submitted under the username The Angry Little Bunny. Reported age 23. Reported gender male. I would note, the doses described in this report are potentially life-threatening. The amount taken is beyond a heavy dose and could pose serious health risks or result in unwanted extreme effects. Doses such as this have been known to cause hospitalizations and or deaths. Sometimes extremely high doses reported are errors rather than actual doses used. This is a report about the worst psychosis I ever had from any drug, and I wouldn't lie if I would say that this was probably the most horrifying experience of my life, and I didn't think I would survive that. I've used a few dissociative drugs in the past. I mainly was addicted to plain PCE for 2 or 3 months, during which I got a psychosis 2 times, which each lasted 2 weeks and were horrifying. After a few months of abstinence, I occasionally used 3 MEO PCE again, which overall feels extremely similar to PCE. I don't think I could tell any difference. I maybe used it once or twice a week. 5 of them would give my light effects, which would just make me feel a bit flirty and elevate my mood. After a long abstinence, 15 already felt really strong. I just get a really typical, stimulating and manic dissociation. But tolerance increased quickly, and I soon needed 25 and after a few times, and soon even 40 plus. I would almost consistently get what I call the Alice in Wonderland syndrome, which only occurred rarely with PCE. But I attribute that to permanent changes in my brain and not the drug. I thought I would be safe from a psychosis if I only use it every few days, but I guess I was wrong. One Thursday evening, maybe 10 but I took about 13 intranasal, and after an hour I didn't really feel a satisfying effect. So I increased the dose to maybe a bit more than 14 over 2 to 3 hours. Which was a dose I took multiple times before. However, the effect was still unsatisfying, and at maybe 4 am I attempted to sleep, but it was impossible. Towards the morning, I get pretty strong anxiety. I looked in the mirror thinking my face looked extremely deformed and ugly. It was so bad I wanted to cry, but I couldn't. The day went on, and in the evening I had to go to a course. I still didn't feel a bit tired, and the course went from 5:30 p.m. to 9 p.m. On the way there I listened to some Japanese anime music, and when I took the headphones off in the course, the music seemed to have burned itself into my brain, and I was still hearing it silently, which was extremely annoying and scary. The music seemed to have burned itself into my brain, and I was still hearing it silently, which was extremely annoying and scary. I'm pretty sure this was already the psychosis setting in, because when I looked around, although everyone looked better than me, I felt worthless. I also started to occasionally see rainbow-colored lines around objects. On the train ride home, I suddenly heard a repetitive wah-wah sound. I thought someone was playing some weird music on loud in the train, because it would go away when I plugged my ears. I tried to ignore this and slight hallucinations, thinking I just need to sleep it off. When I got out of the train and went home, the wah sound followed me, which absolutely terrified me. I understood now that if I would hear any noise, it would trigger the sound. I was so terrified that I took one of Xanax and slept on the couch where my mom was reading. Overall, I slept about 4 hours. But the most horrifying thing happened after that. When I woke up, the hallucinations had extremely intensified. I slept about 4 hours, but the most horrifying thing happened after that. When I woke up, the hallucinations had extremely intensified. I saw rainbow-colored blinking lines and geometric patterns everywhere. When I would rub my eyes, I would see extremely complex rainbow-colored fractal patterns changing and eventually disappearing in hundreds of blue pixels that would cover my field of vision for a few seconds, even when I opened my eyes. I tried to cope with it by trying to accept that I have to live with these patterns now. I mean, they look kinda pretty. When I would take a walk, there were moving patterns in vivid rainbow colors everywhere. Almost like as if I had taken a strong dose of some psychedelic drug. I couldn't accept that, because the next night I still couldn't sleep at all. I later was convinced that it was a brain lesion and asked my parents to bring me to a hospital. There I asked the neurologist for an MRI scan, for which he gave me an appointment. But after describing the symptoms, he also said he's pretty sure it is a psychosis. Afterwards, we went to a psychiatric hospital because I hoped they could help me sleep. I got there at maybe afternoon and then just lied in bed seeing crazy fractal hallucinations everywhere. I was sure I permanently fucked myself up, and I thought I probably have to commit suicide after I get out of here. At about 3 am I went to a nurse telling her I couldn't sleep. I overall annoyed the staff a lot in my psychotic state. She gave me a 14 tablet of prostaglandin, an antipsychotic medication. I lied back down in my bed, but soon after that my ears felt like they were closing. I was terrified and got up, but I walked as if I had like over 2 promille. It was really difficult. I went back outside to the nurse because I was terrified, but she was just really annoyed that I still wouldn't sleep. I told her that I wanted to go home, but she said I had to wait until 10 am to leave. I spent the night drinking as much water as I can to try to flush out the prostaglandin and asked my parents to take me home. I was extremely depressed on the way home. I was sure I would be completely unfunctional for the rest of my life from this time on. I thought the dose of 3 MEO PCE destroyed the sleeping part of my brain, and the only way to fix me was to have a surgery where they would implant a new sleeping part in my brain. That's how far gone I was. At home my mom gave me talk of that, but even after 3 nights without sleep I still couldn't fall asleep and panicked. During the day I would hear the wah-wah sound plus police sirens in the background, and I would get light flashes all over my field of vision. I was so terrified I told my dad, OMG, the 3 MEO PCE is eating holes in my brain right now. I hope it kills me quickly. I even told my parents my password to my phone so they can tell my friend that I died, because I was sure I was going to die in a few days. I and my dad went back to the hospital after 4 nights of no sleep. I felt extremely awake and anxious in the hospital. The psychiatrist there suggested I should take 5 of Laurie's palm with form of tizanidine every 30 minutes with relaxing music up to 3 times until I fall asleep. So my dad got the prescription for these 2 drugs and we went home. Towards the evening I felt extremely tired and kinda stiff. When I looked around I would get strong after images, but it was still impossible to sleep. It felt like there was a mental block preventing me to even enter the half-asleep state when I lied down. At 10 p.m. my dad gave me the first 2. 5 of Laurie's palm were formed of tizanidine while putting on some meditative music. The experience was quite nice. While I lay there and the drugs started working, I felt like I was spinning slowly and floating down. 30 minutes later I got the same 2 drugs again, and another 30 minutes later I got another 2. 5 of Laurie's palm with 115 of trazodone, but I still couldn't sleep and started to freak out. About 2 to 3 hours after the first dose I convinced my dad to give me another 2. 5 of Laurie's palm. I slept maybe a minute before a horrific nightmare woke me up. I had 10 of lorazepam plus other sedating drugs in my body with almost 5 days no sleep and still couldn't sleep. This freaked me out extremely. I can't really remember what I did next, but apparently I stumbled into my room and took whatever I thought could put me to sleep. Apparently I took some datura seeds which I collected last summer but never touched after that. My parents drove me back to the hospital and apparently I was awake and talking the whole time, but I remember nothing. My parents drove me back to the hospital and apparently I was awake and talking the whole time, but I remember nothing. I only slowly came back to me when I was brought into the hospital in a wheelchair, but at first I thought I was dreaming. I literally thought I was dreaming about the hospital and told the doctors that I took 7 of datura seeds and 30 of amibarbital when they asked me. They obviously were terrified, because I would be absolutely dead if I took that. I was put on a hospital bed and there I slowly realized that this was real, and only later my parents texted me what happened, as I had no idea. I was on a heart rate monitor and my heart rate was at about 120 with high blood pressure. A doctor who watched over me told me to stop moving and lie still to not get a heart attack. I still had slight hallucinations from the datura, which still were minor compared to the psychosis. Basically, I often would barely recognize the room I was looking at as a room. Everything in my visual field just seemed like random shapes to me. Sometimes walls changed colour and the room filled with mist, but this went away over a few hours and I was left with the usual hallucinations. The time in the hospital was horrible. When I would move around or shake my pillow I would hear entire conversations from the sound. I would hear voices and the sound of blowing wind plus the wah and police siren sounds in the background. Towards the night, I got 25 ml of melphalan at 10 pum, which is a pretty mild antipsychotic which again didn't help me sleep at all. At 2 am in the bed is where the hallucinations turned interesting. I could literally pick them up with my fingers. I was almost convinced I was able to see some kind of invisible energy. I even tried to photograph the hallucinations with my phone and was surprised when they also showed up on the photos. When I looked at them later, the hallucinations were obviously gone. At 3 am a rather nice nurse came to my room. After I told her I still couldn't sleep despite the melphalan, she gave me 10 of zolpidem and brought me to another room. I was sure this wouldn't help, but to my complete surprise I actually fell asleep for 2 to 3 hours. For the first time I had hope again after that. In the afternoon of the next day I was discharged, but I still had the hallucinations and anterior distortions and was really struggling to sleep. For the next week I was just extremely lethargic and felt horrible during the day, but it slowly got better. After a few days out of the hospital the visual hallucinations went away. Then I had the MRI which came back completely fine. Then the wah and siren sounds subsided. Now, almost 3 weeks after this started I still have slight trouble sleeping and I took lorazepam for sleep the last few days. But it's getting better and I'm almost back to normal. I thought benzodiazepine withdrawals are bad, but this was so much more horrifying. Even during benzo withdrawal I could sleep a bit each night and I at least know exactly what it was. I never want to take dissociative drugs again, or most addictive drugs for that matter. A psychosis from dissociatives which are stimulating and have a potency close to PCP, such as PCE, 3-MEO PCE or 3-MEO PCP, is probably the most horrifying drug experience one can have, and I could easily see how I might have committed suicide during this. I hope you found this experience report informative and enjoyable. Thank you for listening.